So, as I was saying, we are going to be tackling subscription management, particularly in HubSpot. But we're going to basically, it's kind of going to be two parts to today's presentation. The first one is going to be all about kind of just the approach to subscriptions versus audiences that I think a lot of people struggle to get their heads around when it comes to thinking about their subscription management. And then we're going to get into some of the more nitty gritty HubSpotty stuff about, settings, properties, best practices, and how HubSpot actually handles data privacy. Also, I know it says a 45-minute intro. That was clever, technicalities on my part because I'm going to aim for 45 minutes of solid content just to wrap us up with 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So before I soldier on, I have my kind of moderator, Lisa Latour, who's going to be keeping an eye on the chat for me. So if you guys have any questions or want me to stop or clarify anything, just throw a message in the chat. She'll unmute and let me know that there's something there that warrants my attention. All right. Also, Lisa, don't hesitate to let me know if I don't share the right tab of Chrome. So I'm going to jump over to my presentation right now. So, 45-minute intro to managing subscriptions, opt-out, and unsubscribes in HubSpot. Ignore the fact that I got the time wrong. That was the time of my last HubSpot user group, and I clearly forgot to change that, even though I changed my intro slide. Who am I? And why am I qualified to talk to you about subscription management in HubSpot and beyond? So the essential points of my HubSpot history is that I've been working with HubSpot since about 2018, and I've been working freelance as Hubcap Solutions since 2020. Today, Hubcap Solutions is a two-person team that, like it says there, laser focused on HubSpot. It's all we do. And the second half of that two-person duo is Lisa Latour, our moderator today. So all we do is HubSpot front to back. But before I got into HubSpot, I spent a lot of time in just working as an in-house marketing person or at various marketing agencies. So my love of HubSpot kind of came from seeing how clients were using it and the struggles that they were having with it when I was actually, kind of hands-on in the marketing world. So that's where kind of my email marketing familiarity comes with as well. So our agenda today, intros and tech issue buffer, which is what we're in right now. As I said, we're going to touch on kind of subscriptions versus audiences. Then we're going to pop into the actual, functionality of how HubSpot kind of manages subscriptions and GDPR. This is going to be also where I'll talk, I don't have a dedicated slide to it, but throughout this whole thing, I'll be talking a little bit about the different email compliance laws, GDPR, CAN spam, and CASL, and kind of how all of that interacts with the kind of technical pieces that HubSpot has to keep you compliant from a regulatory standpoint. Then we're going to talk a little bit about forms and marketing emails, because those are the two ways, pardon me, those are the two ways that most people either collect subscriptions and or email permissions, and frankly, how they go about getting those things modified when they receive, a marketing email and then click the link that says, hey, I'd like to manage my my subscriptions. And then last but not least, we'll wrap up with Q&A and a farewell. So let's dive right into things. So subscriptions versus audiences. This is, like I say, an important distinction and something that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to thinking about their kind of email marketing approach. So for the purposes of what we're going to be talking about today, subscriptions are the types of emails that you send. So maybe you send, a weekly event roundup. Maybe you send a quarterly newsletter. Maybe you send weekly promotions or a monthly discount code, or basically any kind of specific stream of email that you can identify is a subscription. An audience is the people who, based on interest or some other type of segmentation that you might have, who want to receive, or who would be receiving those those types of emails. So we're going to work through kind of a high level example here just to help us kind of crystallize this in our brains. So what I've got is I have Cooking with Cody, which if you picture it in the landscape of your mind, basically think of any kind of obnoxious food blog that you've ever clicked on. So, boring recipes to make soups, but with a, 2,000 word preamble on how you were inspired to make this soup by a trip to Tunisia and how all your neighbors love it and how, you serve it on a wonderful, tablecloth that you bought on said trip. So picture that in your mind. So, and now, because we all know how this works, picture the pop-up that appears in the middle of your screen after you've spent 30 seconds on that website saying, hey, would you like to get the Cooking with Cody newsletter? And when you go to fill out that form, the Cooking with Cody newsletter asks you a couple of questions. The first is, how would you describe, forgot I can't highlight, is how would you describe your diet? Are you a carnivore, an omnivore, a vegetarian, or a vegan? So these are the audiences that Cooking with Cody's newsletter or Cooking with Cody's email campaigns might want to cater to, because I might want to send, or I probably would want to send, different types of content based on whether you're a carnivore or a vegan. Or as you're going to see in the next slide, if I'm sending out some content, I might want to change the way I present that based on whether you're a vegetarian, a vegan, or an omnivore. So it doesn't matter what type of email, whether it's a promo, whether it's a recipe, whether it's an event invitation, it doesn't matter what type of email I'm sending. Audience kind of determines content and whether the subject and the focus of an email is relevant to somebody who might be receiving it. And then the second question Cooking with Cody is going to ask us when we sign up is, what would you like us to send you? Our monthly newsletter, invites to our community meetups, and delicious recipes. You could opt into all of them. You could opt into just one of them. Again, so this is basically asking the person, pardon me, what kind of stuff do you want to receive from us? So if we jump over to the next slide, we can see how those two things interact. So I want to send I want to send one email with the same email to two different audiences this month. So I've got one email, 10 rich new vegan recipes, and I've got another email, 10 low cholesterol recipes where you won't miss the cheese. These are the same email. It's the same 10 recipes. And if we look down here, because it's the same subscription, like it doesn't matter which audience you're in, because I'm sending out recipes, it's going to be in the subscription of recipes. If somebody has told me they don't want to receive recipes, it doesn't matter which audience they're in. I'm going to listen to that preference and not send them recipes because they've already told me that's not a type of content that they care about. But if they have told me that they're interested in recipes, then I'm going to segment this based on which audience they're in. Vegans, 10 rich new vegan recipes, as somebody who eats a lot of vegetarian and vegan food. Richness is definitely something that I'm always looking for because, frankly, we don't get a lot of fat unless it's coconut oil. So 10 rich new vegan recipes, and then 10 low cholesterol recipes where you won't miss the cheese because, yeah. So to sum that up, so every email fits only one subscription, but emails can appeal to multiple audiences. And the fits only one subscription is very important in the HubSpot context. We're going to see this a little bit later on. But when you send an email, the thing that you have to do every single time is tell HubSpot what type of subscription does this align with. And if somebody wants to if you want to send that email out, somebody has to, depending on your settings, either opted into or at the very least not opted out of that subscription. So now we're going to actually look at, how this walks itself out kind of down at the individual level. So right here, I've got my subscriber, Reg Bird, and here's the subscription preferences that Reg has told me. So Reg has told me that he's a vegan and that he's interested in receiving events and recipes. So based on our previous slide and how we want to send this stuff out, Reg is going to receive 10 rich new vegan recipes this month because, yep, he's told me he wants to receive recipes, and yep, he's told me that he's a vegan. So awesome. Meg's told me that she's a vegetarian, she doesn't care about recipes. She's just only interested into my, my monthly or my community meetup events. So she's not going to receive any emails this month because the two emails that we're going to send out, both of them were in the recipes subscription. So great. Yep, we have vegetarian content this month, but no email from Meg because she doesn't care about our recipes. And then last but not least, Joe's told us he's an omnivore. He doesn't care about our events, but he does care about our recipes so this month he's going to get 10 low cholesterol recipes where you won't miss the cheats because he's subscribed to recipes and he's a member of the omnivore audience. Now, pardon me. Sorry, I'm a little froggy today, fighting off the tail end of a cold. So this is kind of how, and it doesn't matter how you collect or bucket people. Like I've known organizations that build their audiences based on the industry that somebody is a part of. Like, so say you're importing somebody from a conference, and you've gone to a transportation industry conference, so you have a trucking conference. So you're saying, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to bring all of these people in because they filled out my little win the Yeti mug slip. They've ticked off the tick box that says, yep, you can send me email. And now I know that they're in, because they came from the trucking conference, they're in the trucking industry. So I might put them in the, transportation audience that I have. I don't have to have had them tell me which audience they belong to. I can set that myself. But for the most part, it is important that you tell them what type of subscriptions they might want to opt into. Giving people control of the types and frequency of emails that they want to receive is generally very important to just good subscriber health. And we're going to touch on this a little bit later when I have some kind of real world examples to talk about. So doing it right and wrong with some frequent mistakes. So good subscriptions need to meet a few basic criteria. Again, you need to identify the nature of the email that it's sending. So be very clear that if you are, if there's a recipe subscription, you're just going to get recipes for that. If there is a, we're going to send you the flyer every month. Hey, have a subscription, for flyers. And now this is really, we're going to see when we look at our kind of bad example later, that ambiguity in the types of subscriptions or what type of content you're going to be receiving based on the subscription that you're in is a common cause of confusion for people. And it really is a reason why, even if you have multiple subscriptions, people will frequently just unsubscribe. Because, if I look at the list and I'm like, I don't really know, or if I manage my subscriptions and I opt out of something, but I then receive an email that I think would have been related to that subscription, then I'm like, okay, does any of this matter? I don't even know. And then I unsubscribe altogether. So a lot of times what I'll say is when people are making their subscriptions, like actually write out a description and kind of make a commitment to saying, hi, you will receive an estimated number of emails per an estimated time frame. If it's a quarterly newsletter, you will receive one email every quarter from us, which will contain any upcoming events we have, our top performing blogs from the previous quarter, and an employee profile. You don't have to be dogmatic about it, but just setting an expectation of how often they're going to get it and a rough expectation of what that's going to contain. It helps your subscribers understand what they're going to get. It's also a good discipline exercise for you. It kind of forces you to think through, all right, what would I actually want to do with this subscription? And frankly, don't feel the need to have more than one subscription. Like, a lot of people think of, okay, I'm going to have 9 different audiences. That means I have to have 9 different subscriptions. But, don't be afraid to just start with one subscription. Just call it, marketing information or, email communication or something like that, which gives you just kind of blanket permission to send everything. And feel free, still give people an estimate about how much email you're expecting to send them. But don't feel the need to force yourself down a whole bunch of subscriptions if you don't have kind of the diversity of content to support that. So now, if you won't follow me on LinkedIn, you might have seen this slide, which I shared. But this is just two real world examples of a subscription management page. One, because I'm a huge nerd and I play Warhammer 40,000, we're going to look at theirs, which is awesome. And then HubSpot's, which I don't think is that great. So I'm going to switch over to this tab here. Awesome. So here is Warhammer's subscription management page. And I just got this 2-3 weeks ago. They kind of updated how they did all their subscription management. So you can see here, basically they're like, all right, confirm your info for us, email, the name that they're going to include when they send it out to me. I'm in Canada. I like English. And then now, just like in my Cooking with Cody, they're basically asking me to put myself into one or multiple audiences. So they're basically asking me, hey, what games that we make do you like? And I like Warhammer 40,000, I like Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and I like Warhammer the Horus Heresy. I'm less of a fan of the Lord of the Rings game and this one called Warhammer the Old World. So what this tells them is that, oh, hey, do we have an email about Warhammer 40,000? Cool. Let's make sure Cody's on that list. Oh, do we have an email about Lord of the Rings? Maybe we can leave Cody off of that list. Which is your favorite setting? So of the three that I like, they're like, oh, okay, Age of Sigmar is his number one. So if we're going to send out a newsletter that has Warhammer 40K content and Age of Sigmar content, okay, let's emphasize the Age of Sigmar content first, because, that's clearly Cody's favorite. So this is them putting me in an audience. Now, they're asking me to put myself in a subscription without calling it a subscription. So these are kind of the 6 different areas of the hobby. So watching shows and animations, playing video games, reading the books, collecting the miniatures, building and painting, playing the tabletop game. I like doing the first 3 things. I'm a little bit less of a fan of doing the next 3 things. So using these 2 things together, they can say, okay, cool. If we have an email about Warhammer 40,000 that's about the miniature collection or playing the game, okay, cool. That's Cody. If we have something about, hey, we're releasing a new Warhammer 40,000 TV show, okay, Cody's not going to get on that list because he's told us he's not interested in the subscription of, TV shows and animation updates. So this is kind of a way of basically asking, and you don't have to get this, complicated, to do it. Asking people just direct questions is totally fine. But this was a way that I was like, because I know how all this stuff works, I kind of saw the matrix and I was like, oh, neat. I like the approach that they're taking here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second there. Pardon me, I'm going to get my share going again. All right, so now we're actually looking at HubSpot's subscription management screen, which is significantly longer and frankly, significantly less transparent. And a lot of this comes from the fact that HubSpot has to manage so many different languages of subscriptions. But even if we go up to the easy stuff, then I'm like, okay, marketing, email, HubSpot product launches and updates. Okay, marketing, email, HubSpot education, content, and resources. They're doing a good job of trying to give me a an explanation of what's coming, of kind of what each subscription is going to get me access to. But I don't know how many, how frequently any of those emails are going to come out. And I also, in my experience of receiving HubSpot information, it's tough for me to figure out which type of subscription this would apply to. So even just the marketing email, inbound marketing email events. Inbound is an event. And I get it that inbound is like their giant annual conference. It's not the same as the webinars that they might be sending things out to. But they even specifically say what's happening at the biggest and best inbound marketing conferences and meetups in the world. Well, that's what inbound is. So again, this is just something that it's not wrong. It's just not as user friendly as it could be, which, was just funny to me as somebody who's so close to the HubSpot ecosystem. And I was like, you know, always interested to see that even they're not perfect when it comes to that. So let's. And so last thing I want to say is, so this was the email that we received from HubSpot to get to that subscription management page. And so we just wanted to include it to be like, okay, sweet. It seems like it should be the resources subscription you would unsubscribe from to stop getting this particular type of email. But Lisa did unsubscribe from that. And then, with like next week proceeded to get another email that was like, oh, I thought I already unsubscribed from that subscription. Anyway. So now we're going to get into the actual, like, kind of practical HubSpot, nitty gritty of all of this. So I'm just going to share this tab instead. So we're looking at my HubSpot account right now. And if we just go settings, marketing, email. Under email, if we just go over to the subscription types tab, this is where you go to create a subscription. So for my own account, I've created event invitations, marketing invitations, or marketing information. I call it promo codes. Perfect. You always have to set a language subscription. English, boom. But name, little description, and we create it. And we'll see exactly how this walks itself out in just a second. But the actual act of creating a subscription isn't hard in HubSpot. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why people will often end up with more subscriptions than they need to. It's so easy to create them. You can pop in, whip one off. Oh, great. Awesome. Luckily, it's also very easy to archive a subscription. So, hey, even though I just created it, now that one's archived. And then you can find your archived subscriptions just by filtering by status. Hey, promo codes. If I decide, oh, I actually need that, I can just unarchive that. And what that actually means from a practical standpoint is that any information you've collected, any people who have subscribed or unsubscribed to the whatever subscription you're working with, when you archive it, those fields will disappear. Like, you won't see that subscription reflected on your contact or your subscription management pages. It will disappear. But if you then unarchive it in the future, it will bring back all of that information. So again, you can, they don't even give you the option to kind of full delete these things. You basically do just have to archive or unarchive them. But if you have more subscriptions than you think you want right now, don't worry too much about it. You can absolutely just go ahead, archive any that are no longer necessary, and you're good to go. You also might find, if you created your subscriptions a long time ago, that if you go and edit them, it'll ask you to fill in a language. Historically, like, several years ago, if you created subscriptions, it didn't care what language it was. So, again, if you're looking at your subscriptions for the first time in a while, don't be surprised if you try to save it and you get a little bit of an error and it's like, please pick a language. Totally normal. And then what we're going to actually look at is where this actually shows up. Sorry. What this actually kind of means from a user-facing perspective. So while we're here under email, there's this subscriptions tab. And this has 3 different kind of preview pages. Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sharing this tab. Perfect. And this is something that a lot of people forget about, either don't know about or forget about. So there's 2 things that I want to, familiarize you with here today. So we're going to look at the default subscription preferences page. So this is the page that people will land on.
Sorry, you gotta flip over to the tab.
Oh, sorry, thank you. So this is the page that people will end up looking at when they click Manage Preferences in HubSpot. So you can see mine's set up super basic. I don't do a lot of email marketing, so this one isn't super important to me. But this also represents the kind of the second thing that I want to talk about, which I'll touch on in just a second. So the first thing is that title and that description that you populated when creating the subscription, that's what shows up in here. So sometimes I'll also see people who they'll make subscriptions that are really internally facing, like they'll have an entire subscription for employee notifications or something like that. Forgetting that, yeah, cool, that I get it that you're going to send some emails that might be mostly for your internal staff using HubSpot. So creating an employee email subscription makes logical sense, because then you can put that email in that subscription when you send it out. But they forget that, oh, right, when anybody who clicks on Manage Preferences is going to see this page, and they're going to see employee notifications as a subscription on this list, which, even if they don't opt into it, it's just like, oh, that's weird. That feels like that's something that I, as an external person, shouldn't be able to opt into. So this is basically just to illustrate that whatever you put in those subscription types manifests itself on your subscription management page. The other thing is, get my share going on. The other thing is that you can edit these pages. Like when you set up HubSpot the first time, or when HubSpot onboarded you, they probably did some basic setup for this. It's very common that as part of that onboarding process, HubSpot's, hey, let's make a basic theme for you that kind of matches your current website. So a lot of times people just kind of take for granted that, oh yeah, these matched my current branding. But then you get a new logo, or you do a website redesign, and then all of a sudden the styling of this page doesn't match the styling of whatever your new brand looks like. And then that becomes a moment of, oh, okay, somebody who's already considering unsubscribing or receiving less email from you because they clicked unsubscribe or manage preferences, they now get kind of a broken, weird user experience because it doesn't match the brand, or it just looks off, which is kind of adds a little bit more friction to that interaction, which is already kind of a bit of a moment of truth for the brand. So all that is just to say that every now and then, pop in if you're doing some subscription work, just preview it, see what your subscription management pages look like, and if they don't look like what you want them to, just grab yourself a HubSpot dev, or grab yourself your web dev, and they can come in here and they can edit the themes and templates that are being used in those pages as well. So just something to be aware of. All right. Just for a reminder's sake, yep, you can find that setting, marketing, email, and then under the subscriptions area, if you want to go check that out in your own account after our session today. Now, subscription statuses. So we're going to look at an actual contact in just a minute, but there really are 3 different possible subscription statuses. And I'm touching on this because once we get talking about the data privacy settings, these actually become pretty important. So there is subscribed. This is if somebody has provided explicit consent, but usually via submitting a form with the checkboxes for subscription options on it, or if somebody from your team has decided to proactively subscribe a user to a subscription, which will also show. So subscribe basically means you either did something or the contact did something to explicitly say, yes, I want to receive this type of email. Unsubscribe is basically the opposite. So if there is a form with a checkbox that says, hey, I'd like to receive the newsletter and I'd like to receive event invites, and I choose to check that I want to receive event invites, but I choose not to tick the box that says newsletter, what I'm doing in that situation is I am subscribing to events. I am unsubscribing to newsletter because I'm choosing not to provide consent for that subscription. This also obviously happens if somebody clicks the unsubscribe link, and you can manually unsubscribe people from contact, from any given subscription. If you've, been told via a reply, or maybe somebody has sent you an email or just told you over the phone, hey, I don't want to receive any of this stuff as well. There's a way that you can go about manually unsubscribing people. Probably what most of your database is going to be is not specified. So if you're not using the data privacy settings, which we're going to talk about in a minute, or you're importing people, or you have an integration with, let's say, Salesforce that's bringing people into the database, a lot of those people are just starting as not specified. Because if you've manually created somebody, if you've imported somebody, if you've brought somebody over from Salesforce, those people haven't explicitly done anything. They're just there. They haven't told you that they want it. They haven't told you that they don't want it. So there's not specified. And if you have the data privacy settings on, you will not be able to send to not specified. If you don't have the data privacy settings on, you will be able to send to not specified. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit more detail in just a minute. But let's look at how that actually looks on a contact. So you can see here of my snip, I'm going to, in just a second, I haven't switched tabs yet. Don't worry about it. I just needed to pull up my sample contact. So we're looking at Lisa. And just on the left-hand side here, below view subscriptions, or below about this contact, there's the communication subscription box. So right now, Lisa is unsubscribed from both of our types of email, event invitations and marketing information. And she's not specified on one-to-one emails. So I'm going to resubscribe Lisa to event invitations. And now keep in mind, this could also happen by Lisa submitting a form again that said, hey, I actually do want to receive event invitations. So people can make this happen on their own. But when you are subscribing somebody, it's going to ask you for the legal basis. So has she expressed legitimate interest because of a lead? Is she a customer? Is this required in performance of a contact? Freely given consent from contact. That's usually what we go for if somebody subscribes to something via a form. So I'll just say that. And then you've got to give basically a context blurb. And then we can see that Lisa is subscribed. So again, because she's unsubscribed from marketing information, any email that I would classify as marketing information, she's not going to be eligible to receive. Any email that I would be sending that is an event invitation, she would be eligible to receive. Jump back to a tab here. So that brings us into like the HubSpot data privacy settings. So this is where we actually get to Castle, GDPR, CAN-SPAM, et cetera, because this is how you actually go about managing those settings. And I am I will give the standard disclaimer here that it's like always talk to your legal department about compliance. Just because something is technically managed one way or another doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to satisfy, your legal or risk management department's appetite or requirements. So always got to check any approaches on that front, with the relevant authorities within your own organization. But basically, going back to that whole going back to that whole idea of subscribed versus not specified, the HubSpot data privacy tools, the real separation is that if you turn them on, you will have to provide a legal basis for communication, and those people will have to be subscribed. So if you do not turn on the data privacy settings, you can basically send to anybody that hasn't unsubscribed. So that includes not specified people. So this is not a compliance thing. This is just a technical ability. So you import a list from a conference. They come in as not specified because they haven't told you what their subscription preference is, and you haven't gone out of your way to manually set them. So they're sitting there as not specified for marketing emails. If you do not have the data privacy settings turned on, you can send to those people. You are technically able to send to those people. Also, if you're in America and operating under the CAN-SPAM laws, you can send to those people. Like all the CAN-SPAM requires is that you give people a way to opt out. If you're operating under CASL in Canada or GDPR in the EU, you cannot send to those people because you haven't specified, or those people haven't given you explicit consent. So under that umbrella, you would have to go in, apply the subscribed setup to those, or the subscribed preference to those people for that specific subscription type, and provide a legal basis for communication. So again, it's, we can find this by going, and I'll hop over to this tab. We can find all of this by going to settings, privacy and consent, data privacy. So in my account, I don't have the data privacy settings turned on because I don't do any marketing email, so it's not really applicable right now. If I was going to start doing a monthly newsletter, I would flip this switch and it would give me a big old warning that says, hey, you're about to impact how you can communicate with your customers, because you're now going to have to actively solicit and provide subscriptions, and you're not going to be able to send to anybody that doesn't have those subscriptions. So if you aren't using this and you are planning to, be aware that you're going to probably lose access to a big portion of your database. Now, is that inherently a bad thing? In my opinion, no, because again, this is another one of those moments where it's like, even if it's a pain from an operational standpoint, the extra discipline that it imposes in kind of like forcing you to ask very clear and explicit questions and set expectations around subscription management is kind of a net positive. Also, while I'm here, we're going to look at, the legal text that goes along with consent in a little while. This consent option, that's where you can edit whatever your default, legalese wants to be. So HubSpot, provides some, which is compliant with GDPR. Again, if your legal team deems you could have more or less, you can go here and you can edit this default kind of GDPR privacy and data privacy information. All right, so I'm going to jump back. Privacy and consent, data privacy. Yeah. Perfect. Yep. So this is just basically talking about that whole the legal basis. So you guys saw when I opted in Lisa, you're going to get two things: the default legal basis, and then a box to explain the context in which that legal basis was applied. So when we're doing this on forms, this is basically something that we'll set up as part of our form. So the legal basis for for that form might be freely given from consent or freely given from contact, and my text blurb might be, submitted a form to request an ebook or sign up for a webinar. If I was manually importing somebody from a conference that I knew I had consent from, my default might be, legitimate interest lead, and then my context box would be, provided consent via contest at Trucking Industry Conference 2023. So all of this is just kind of like basically kind of a CYA, legal thing if you ever do get audited or find yourself kind of afoul of one of the regulatory bodies that handles kind of email privacy and security. So now let's spend kind of 7 minutes chatting a little bit about how you actually go about collecting some of this stuff. So first, we're going to look at marketing emails real quick, because I have talked a lot about when it's time to send a marketing email. So if we go marketing email, I've got my little draft Christmas party invite here. So under settings, and this happens for every email that you're going to have to send. You're going to have to select a subscription type. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road on everything we've talked about so far, because you literally have to, every single email, you have to put into one of your subscription buckets. And then what that's going to do is when you send that email, when you put somebody on a list and try to send them an email, it's going to look back to their individual subscription preferences. And depending on your data privacy settings, it's going to say, all right, is that person eligible to receive my email? If you've got data privacy on, it's going to look at that person and it's going to say, hey, are they subscribed to marketing information? And do they have a legal basis for processing with marketing information? Or if you don't have data privacy, it's just going to check and say, have they unsubscribed from marketing information? So this is where a lot of people are like, but what if my email has a link to an ebook and it has an event to an invite, or an invite to an event in there, and I've got a content subscription and I've got an event subscription. Which subscription do I choose? The short answer is you kind of just have to make the Sophie's choice in that one. And I always encourage people, this is why I say, like, if the only thing you regularly, if you can't neatly bucket all of your email into, discrete streams, my event stream, which comes once a month, my new resources or blog digest stream, which comes once every 2 weeks. If your email marketing program isn't at that level of maturity, and there's no shame if it's not, then just don't oversubscribe yourself. Just let people know that my subscription is, company X marketing content, and then in the description, this encompasses our event invites, our content, content from our blog, and any new resources that we publish. We typically send 2 to 3 emails per quarter. That's enough. That's a great, and that puts you a one step ahead of a lot of folks. So rather than worrying, hey, do I need 19 different subscriptions? If I had to give people advice, I would say focus more on your audiences and the customization that goes in there, and less about having exactly the right subscription type for every email that you send. Don't be afraid to be a little bit broader at the beginning until you've established some really clear and really concise email cadences. And then just, under that kind of general marketing subscription, make your audiences sing. And maybe that means that not everybody gets every email, which is totally fine. Awesome. So that's me on my little soapbox, but yeah, so this is where you have to pick the subscription type. If you sent any HubSpot email address, any email in the past, you're already familiar with this. Pardon me. And then one thing with email that kind of falls more under the umbrella of a hack than any kind of fundamental thing is, if you look at the footer, by default, HubSpot includes unsubscribe and manage preferences. You can choose to only provide one or the other. So what I encourage a lot of people to do is, if you have multiple subscriptions, just take away the unsubscribe link. Because unsubscribe just takes you directly to, hey, we're going to stop sending you all email. Manage preferences still gives you the ability to unsubscribe from all email, but it shows you the different type of subscriptions before you do that. So this is where I say I was, my real world example is that I was looking at, I subscribed to a tea company called David's Tea. And I was just getting like one email a day. I was like, this is too much. I don't drink this much tea. So I went to unsubscribe. They only gave me the manage preferences option. And then I saw that it's like under that list of preferences, they had like daily promos, the monthly frequent steeper, and then like quarterly new product launches. And I was like, oh, I actually still do want to get the frequent steeper every month. And I'd love to know about the new product launches. I just don't need this daily promo thing. So I opted out of the daily promos, but I stayed subscribed to monthly and quarterly. And that was all just because they forced me into managing my preferences rather than just letting me kind of blanket unsubscribe. Now, that only applies if you have multiple subscriptions, but it's kind of a useful little hack I like to remind people. And it's as simple as just clicking on your email footer, which is going to have to be in every email you have. And instead of having both, just selecting manage preferences. On the flip side, if you only have one subscription, don't hesitate to just like drop that out and just go unsubscribe to, to simplify your footer a little bit. All right. I know we've got just a couple of minutes left. So let's take a look at how all of this kind of walks itself out on forms. So if we go marketing, lead capture, forms, I'm just going to take my Lisa certification form. I'm going to edit this right here. So this is the data, privacy, and consent module.
Cody, we can still only see the presentation if you're showing something else.
I am. Apologies. So I'm just looking at forms, Lisa certification, forms, edit form. So this is the kind of data privacy and consent compatible form module. So if you want, you can absolutely go the route of just having like one checkbox of I would like to receive content from company ABC. Like there are ways to make it work. But from a compliance and from a not fighting against HubSpot, kind of working with HubSpot, this is your best option. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to show us how we would go about adding this. So if you go into a form under other form elements, data privacy options, there's a bunch of different, so checkbox for consent, form submit as consent to process. That basically says, hey, I'm going to show you the default legalese text that we looked at earlier, and then there's going to be a checkbox to subscribe. If you really want to be compliant on the GDPR front, technically you're also supposed to provide a separate consent to process their personal data. Does that. And then if you're operating, mostly if you're operating in the United States, there is one here that's just like, hey, by submitting this form, you give us consent. But I encourage you to go with the one that has the checkbox. You can edit the legalese individually on each page, but this pulls directly from the default copy that you set up for your account. Also, if you change the default copy in your account, it doesn't update historical forms. So if you say, if legal's like, hey, we need a new blurb, For the consent text, yeah, you're going to have to go back and change it on any forms that you've already set it up for. Unfortunately, you can't just change it in your defaults and then it'll propagate kind of, backwards through time. But really the most important thing to here to also recognize is that there is no, at least from HubSpot's perspective, global opt-in. There's no, if you have multiple subscriptions, there's no checkbox that is just subscribe me to everything. So I agree to receive other communications from HubSpot. Technically, that's just asking about event invitations. If I want to have people opt in to receive events, receive event invites from Hubcap Solutions on other communications, technically, this form can opt people into both, but they have to check those two checkboxes separately. So this is another reason why not over complicating your subscriptions can be a benefit, because then you don't have to think about, okay, how many checkboxes do I need? But this is also a situation where if if you have a newsletter sign up form, or if you have a register for our event notifications form, you don't have to, you can just include the specific subscription type that people want to opt into on that form. Again, it's a discipline thing. Like if somebody's going to your newsletter and subscribing to your newsletter, that's what they've explicitly told you that they want to receive, So I feel like people are often a little bit too liberal with saying, hey, you've kind of given me consent on everything and I'm going to mean on anything. And so I'm going to take that to mean I have consent for everything. So again, if you have a strong compliance need, this is the way to do it using HubSpot that is closest to kind of full compliance with all the regulations. And even if you don't, this kind of forces a level of subscription management discipline that is frankly beneficial for a lot of organizations. Because frankly, I think we all play it a little bit too fast and loose when it comes to kind of email consent and the stuff that people have opted in to receive. All right. I will just end off by saying that there are ways to do a more simplified version of this using workflows. That's when you start to get into having to know what your HubSpot subscription level is, because we can set subscription types via a workflow. So if you did have a simple footer newsletter subscription form that didn't have the space for a big legal blob and a checkbox to say, yes, I want to receive the newsletter, and your legal team is fine with it, we could set up a workflow that just says, hey, if somebody submits newsletter certification form, enroll them in a workflow which sets their newsletter subscription to subscribed. So you're not entirely reliant on this kind of baked in form module, but because the form module is the way that most people go about collecting it, I encourage people to at least consider using the off-the-shelf module on that front. All right, so I'm just going to jump back because I know we've only got 5 minutes left. Cool. So I'm just going to stop the share. I'm going to check the chat, see if there's anything I can answer for anybody out there. Feel free, raise a hand, shoot something into the chat if Lisa hasn't already answered this. And in the meantime, I will just say that thanks, folks, for carving out some time to listen to me chat at you about subscription management. It's not the most fun element of HubSpot or email marketing in general, but it is 100% a foundational element of HubSpot. And it's a thing where turning on that data privacy setting, it has implications that sometimes people don't realize before they do it, or it could bring benefits to your instance that again, maybe you didn't realize when you started looking at it. So I'm going to say, oh, it looks like Paul, thank you so much for dropping that question in. Oh, I'm sorry that Dan didn't have any audio, but yeah, it looks like.
So Paul has a question. Do you have any tips or insights for deeper customization of the subscription management pages? He likes the Warhammer example, which was great. We all like that. But how do you get started? Even with decent dev skills, getting started on it is daunting.
Totally, totally. So what I will say there, Paul, is it not being a HubSpot web dev myself, I find basically everything that touches the CMS to be a little bit daunting. But I'm just going to get a screen share going. I'll just show the design previewer there. No, I'll show this tab instead. Marketing, website. Yeah, I'll do that one. No, I'll do files and templates, design tools.
So while you're poking around, would forms be an option for us people who don't have web dev skills to do something that maybe doesn't look as pretty but achieves the same functionality?
Yes, definitely. You could look at you could certainly look at doing a yeah, like an elaborate custom form, and then using some workflows to management. Sorry, I always, and this is where you can see my dev module skills aren't at their best. Sorry, what I was basically trying to get to, and sorry for poking around, is that there is a subscription management module that you can access. Marketing settings. I know that I'm not sharing what I should be sharing, but I'll get to it in just a second. Marketing email, subscriptions, edit page. Nope, it's all coded as well. Nuts. Sorry. In the drag and drop design editor, there is just a subscription management module. So if you can pop in, yeah. Okay, sweet. Good to know, Paul, because I was just seeing the HTML, which is probably just how I've got my defaults set, and I'm a little scattered at the moment. But yes, inside there, you'll see the actual email subscription. It really is just a module in the drag and drop that you can pull in. So the easiest way, there's no native way for HubSpot to say, hey, let's take that module, let's break that module up into a bunch of cool little pieces like the Warhammer example would have. What you probably need to do is just custom code that and then have some API calls pinging your actual HubSpot settings to adjust that. If you did want to go with just a a more elaborate page that kind of used the off-the-shelf module, you just have to pull that module into the into that page. So sorry, I know I did a bit of a roundabout way to give kind of an unsatisfying answer on that one. That's just my own web dev skills being a 3.5 out of 10. All right, cool. Right on. All right. Well, we are officially at time. I'm super glad to see, Mike, thanks for, shouting out that I shared something you might be able to use. Paul, thank you so much for all your questions. Josh, thanks for throwing in an additional few, valuable 2 cents over there. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to be sending out the recording of this session after the fact. So if there's anybody in your circle or universe that you think could benefit from it, either in HubSpot or other contexts, feel free, send it along. And yeah, follow me on LinkedIn, join the Western Canadian HubCup user group or HubSpot user group, page on Bevy. And hopefully I'll see you guys at my next event. Thanks for your time.